Well, Regie, it's so great to see you. You've been busy.
I've been busy, and it puts a smile on my face to see you, partner.
Oh, it does me too. I was just reflecting and had a chance to watch the video that you did of writing about dandelions. And you know, you and I had decided that we were going to do this project, and you were going to write, and I was going to watch, and then I was going to write. And as you were doing that, I was taking so many notes about what you were doing, and just with the thought of as a teacher too, I thought, gosh, Regie, can we shift what we're going to do, and could we talk about this as a writer and also as a teacher, what we're teaching others instead of having me do the writing? Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with that. I think it's very hard to have a plan for a whole week. And, we're doing 5 videos and not change your plan because we had an overall framework, what we were going to do, but then you have to see how it goes, just like in the classroom. And it's okay to change it. If it's not working, you have to shift.
I know, isn't that so true? And be
Yeah.
willing to and see the opportunity in that. So what we talked about then, Regie, is you and I really looking through and looking at your poem that you wrote and talking about what you were thinking, because you did a lot of that thinking with us in the moment, but then there were, what else is going on? Because you didn't have a we didn't see this lesson plan. We didn't see all the details of what you were going to write, yet I know they were kind of there. So we're hoping that you can share those with us. And wondering, should we start by you rereading the poem?
Yes, that would be great because I didn't go back and reread it until a couple of hours later.
Okay, so, and here it is already for
Okay.
you.
And let me just say, I did not have a quote lesson plan. Remember, the video that came before this one, when I actually did the demonstration writing, was talking about what I might write about. And so, I think you can over plan. I think the reason that the poem worked for me is because it was so authentic when I was writing it. I was really struggling.
Well,
Okay.
you
Yeah.
had mentioned that you were struggling, and e- even for me watching, it didn't necessarily look as you were, but I could tell you were writing it in the moment, and that was really helpful for me to see.
The other thing too, it was I got lost in that moment because the topic mattered to me. And I said on the video, I think that took about 5 minutes, but when I actually looked at it, it was 10 minutes. But it was, I don't know, want to say if it was kind of a flow, but I was really engaged in what I was doing. And so I was unaware of the time. It went quickly. I was working very hard, to do many things at once. So let
Yes,
me read the
that's
poem and then we can talk about it.
great.
Dandelions. The world looks different to me now. Take, for example, a dandelion. I used to think a dandelion was just a weed, but now I also think it's a lovely flower. Once I really looked at dandelions, got down low and really saw them, I began to think of those yellow weeds in a different way. Sunshine in a dreary world, greens that could be superfoods in glorious and delicious salads, flowers that I could pick and place in a vase to give me comfort. So it is these days. Everything looks a bit different. The trick is, I think, to look closely in new ways and find pieces of joy wherever we can. So when I reread it, Gail, I had a sense of satisfaction that it was a poem that expressed what I was feeling. And actually, writing is a surprise. I didn't know how it was going to turn out, as I shared in the video yesterday. Um, I kind of knew how I was going to start. The first line came to me in the shower, but that was about it. And so, you know, you're starting with a whole poem. I'm not thinking about the skills that I'm going to be teaching. We'll talk more about that. I'm just thinking about writing this poem that's important to me. and
I thought
making
that,
it
yeah,
relevant to me.
that was so interesting to me that you kept coming back to that, and the idea that you were thinking about it in the shower, which gave you purpose. And that purpose, why is this poem so important to me? I wrote that down on my note because to me, that became a pivotal point for me when you said, and once I could answer that question, that first line came to you. The world looks different to me now because you were so connected to this
Mhm.
and you wanted to. And it made me think so much about what we do with kids when we say, just go write a poem.
Right,
And I want you to write a poem about dandelions because I like dandelion.
right. Doesn't work very well.
It doesn't work.
No, no. So I'm modeling for teachers, for parents, but not go write a poem about dandelions. How does the world look to you now? What are you noticing? So it's that what I call choice within structure. Writing works well for kids when there's a lot of choice involved. Not so well when it's very regimented and rigid. So
Right. Okay, speak to that choice within a structure. So you've now just modeled this writing. If you were doing that choice within a structure, what would be your next point with kids then?
this is why I like to start with poetry, because kids, as they go through the grades, have to follow the rules. A sentence has to start with a capital letter, and where's your period, and check your spelling. And we turn off a lot of writers and kids who struggle. Poetry is a great equalizer, which is why I love it,
Mhm.
because equity is a huge issue for me, and I think for everybody today. And so you can break the rules, kids. You don't have to worry about where the capitals go and the periods. You can set it up on the page any way you like. Now, I don't really say all of that. One of the things that's really, and you probably picked this up, is I'm not stopping when I'm demonstrating and saying, now, kids, I want you to pay attention to, I have a space here and I've got a capital here, because you lose the flow. I want them to see the whole of what we're doing. And I think that's true for anything we're teaching. You know, we're
Yes.
not we're not teaching skills in isolation. And then we have to be really careful, I think, in these days of the pandemic,
Mhm.
that we really keep joy and possibility and where kids can be successful at the forefront of everything we're doing.
Mhm. Well, part of what my notes that I was keeping with my columns here was truly um, what I felt about if you were doing this for me, you were talking to me, you were writing this poem for me because I was your audience. You didn't know, but I was. But what you did was you made it. It felt so accessible, and you put me at ease because of the way you started reading it. You reread it, and then each time you made just a teeny little change and you were thinking about, oh, should I put this dandelion up here or should I move it down here? I got to see that in real time what you were doing, and by the time you were finished I was like, you know what, I could do this.
Yes, absolutely. And kids feel the same way. I could do this. And even I have found, even in kindergarten, once they know, some of their letters and sounds, they can do it. So what I might have modeled, it was in kindergarten, I might have put dandelions, and I would have probably just put in the letters and sounds that I thought that they knew, and then did conventional spelling afterwards. Dandelions, I might say dandelions, weeds, flowers, superfood, dandelions. That's it. And then, see, one of the things that I also love about poetry is that you're rereading this reading writing connection. Now, you told me that I reread it 11 times. I can't believe that.
You did,
But think
yes.
about this, everybody who's watching, is that look at all of the work that can be done in just 10 minutes.
Yes.
I used to, when I was also a part to whole teacher, skills and isolation teacher, I was there decades ago. Okay, kids, today I'm going to teach you about line breaks. And tomorrow we're going to learn about white space. And we're going to learn about stanzas and how important, and then the next day, how important word choice is. And what that did was you lose the audience. And I learned this from kindergarten kids.
Oh,
They grasped the whole thing all at once. Like I never mentioned the word stanza, right?
Right.
but I demonstrated it. I demonstrated it.
Yes, yes, you did.
So
And
maybe,
white space too. I mean, you talked about white space, you talked about flow, you talked about, does that sound? How does that sound? So you pointed that out in such a natural way.
yeah, very hard to do, but kids are willing to make the effort, and I was, if they care about the audience, the purpose, the topic.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe this is a good time for me to. I did the same thing as Gail did afterwards. I went and I listed all the skills that I had taught, because honestly, when I've been in classrooms, teachers will say, "Just give me a list of the skills that we need to have, and in what order I should teach them."
Yeah.
And that actually makes it harder. So when you're home with your kids, or your own children, you want to not worry so much about that. They're worrying enough, right?
Right. That's,
So
yes.
I took all of those itty bitty skills and put them into a framework that you could see. So this is what I did. And I'm looking at the big picture here. I was thinking, what was that thinking? Choosing the topic that I was writing, even when I wasn't writing, it was in my head. How do you begin? How do you end? I never talked about ending the poem, but I was thinking about that. And also then rereading was really, really big.
Mhm.
Rereading out loud, um, for rhythm, all of that. Thinking about one of the things that I didn't say, one of the reasons I reread is it gives me time to figure out what do I want to say next. That's really important.
Oh,
Um, Revising, this is a big deal because you're revising. I was done. When I finished that poem, I had done a lot of revision. And you saw that. I kept doing it. It's writing is trial and error. Does this sound better or does that sound better? It's not just like, are your words juicy? What does that mean? They don't have to be fancy. And I was using the features of poetry, all the possibilities. You can see that the white space, the line breaks, one word that I capitalized for emphasis. And I was playing around with language. Now, when I do this in the classroom, I'll say, kids, what did you notice that I did? What might you try? But not until we've read the poem as a whole. So is what I call whole part, whole teaching, not skills in isolation. And then the very important here, I think, is teach it first, demonstrate it first, label it later. So instead of saying, today I'm going to teach you about how to do line breaks, or I'm going to teach you about white space, just do it. So they have a sense of what it is, they've seen it, they have some context. And then you can say, you know what, kids, what we call this when you're writing poetry? We call this part white space on the page, you know. And
yeah.
then that makes it, I think what teachers are always surprised about is how much teaching you can do of really important stuff, in a very short period of time, very short period of time. And if you look at this, all of these features apply to all good writing. It's not like, yes, poetry is its own form and genre, but it's not like you start all over again if you're writing, let's say, fiction. You're still applying, or nonfiction. You're still applying all of this. How does
Mhm.
it flow? Um, okay, I'm going to
Well,
take that away.
yes. I mean, thinking then about the idea of writing poetry, especially at this time of year, and all the different things that we're addressing, and also getting to the heart of where kids are right now, not just kids, but where we are.
Yeah.
And that is, how can we continue our writing and honor how we're all feeling? And maybe that poetry truly is where we could and should be starting.
I think so. I think that poetry has the power to soothe the soul, to really to take away the anxiety. Um, it does that for me, and so I know it does it for a lot of people. It's a time. It's such an unusual time to record and remember what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and to go back to it later to show even future generations. And you can't. I have never had a child not do well with poetry,
Um,
unless we ruin it for them by saying, I'm going to teach you all these skills. But if you approach it with joy, and of course, You
Mhm.
want to immerse them in lots of poetry first. And
Mhm.
we're going to share some resources in our last video, which uh, we'll share those at the end. So you'll get some ideas for poetry books, and so you'll have some resources to go back to.
It's so great. And our next video too is we're going to go work with a student. You're working with a student with poetry so that everyone here can see. Regie did that. We chatted about her writing, and then now we can also see what it looks like with students.
And then the main thing that we'll be looking at with this student is conferring. So this is a public conference, but it's really a one-on-one conference. I'm having a one-on-one conference with this student, and you'll see what happens, and then we'll talk about what we take away from it.
All right, Regie,
Okay,
thank you.
so until next time, we look forward
Okay.
to seeing you again.